Greetings and welcome to Roman of the Empire. I'm your host, Roman. Today we're going to start the first in a series of 3 broadcasts regarding things. Specifically, we're going to be talking about the 1938 novella from John W. Campbell, Who Goes There? The 1951 Howard Hawks' The Thing from Another World, and the 1982 John Carpenter film, Just the Thing. Without the 1938 novella, you don't get the other 2 pieces. Now, they have, we'll call it one element, but it's 3 smaller elements, all in common. You're in the Arctic. There is an alien craft under the ice, and there is an alien body. And that's the one big thing that all of them have in common. The 1951 film diverges greatly from that source material, whereas the 1982 movie from John Carpenter stays very truthful and actually expands on it very well. But we're going to start today with the 1938 John Campbell piece, Who Goes There? This is interesting. Your basic plot line is the same. You have a base down in Antarctica, and they are isolated. That's the entire isolation premise, which feeds into everything else that happens while they are there. There are 37 persons at the station. We only interact with 17 of them, and we don't interact with even most of them. There are certain characters that are crossovers from this to the 1982 film. Benning, he's an aviation mechanic in the novella. He's a meteorologist in the 82 film. Blair is a biologist in both versions. Clark is a dog handler in both versions. Dr. Copper is a physician in both versions. Gary is the base commander in both versions. There's a character called Kinner. He's a cook in the 1938 novella. He's replaced by a character called Knowles in the 1982 film, but they're basically the same character, though their end is not the same. McCready, who's your main character in both versions, in the 1938 book, he is the second in command at the base, and he's a meteorologist who used to be a medical student. In the 82 film, he is the helicopter pilot, which is probably way more sexy for film than the meteorologist. Though I don't know that many meteorologists. It may be entirely sexy, and I just got the entire thing wrong. So, and then you have Norris, who is a physicist. So before I really get going with it, though, I do want to say that there are going to be spoilers, because I can't discuss these in depth if I don't talk about what happens to the people. And that's going to be the same in all 3 broadcasts, and I'll put out the warning on each of those. In case you're not familiar with these, which is unlikely, but maybe not everybody is. So that's why we do these things, because it's fun, one, to have discussions, and I have my opinions about things, you have your opinions about things. So they'll be different, and that'll be interesting. And please, in the comment section, let me know what you think. Let me know where you think I'm off base, or what you think is important that I haven't covered. So apparently there's a giant cricket in the studio. Maybe a thing, maybe not. But apparently he's going to be with us for the duration. So we're going to start. There's a scientific research group down in Antarctica, which we talked about. They pick up a strange magnetic anomaly. And Blair, Copper, McCready, and Van Walls, who is the pilot in this version, go out to the site. And they discover a spacecraft. Or they discover something. They don't know what it is. It's buried under the ice. Something big. And something that's funny through all the versions of it. Thermite is used to try to thaw the ice around the unknown object, probably a craft. And in using the thermite, in this particular version, they discover the hull is made of magnesium, and they set it on fire. So really not the desired outcome, but they do end up finding an alien body. Is it a pilot? Is it a passenger? Is it cargo? Nobody knows. But they find a body. So in the 1938 version, which is different than all the other ones, they have to overnight it up there. That group of folks that Blair, Copper, McCready, and Van Walls. And that's important in a minute, and you'll see why that's important. So they discover the alien, and it's described as a blue-skinned humanoid, ugly, with 3 red eyes, and these worm-like hairs that come out of his neck. And it's speculated that is actually the true form of the thing. If you know the thing, you know that it's a shape changer, imitator of other creatures. So in this version, this is the only version that they ever speculate about the true version of the alien anyway, which is it's interesting. So there's that. So they of course they bring it back to the base, because when you find a dead thing frozen in the ice, you bring it back to the base, because science. So they get it there, and there's a disagreement, because Blair, who is the biologist there, and Copper, who's the doctor, they want to thaw the critter out and do an exam on it, research it, because science. That's what they do. That's what they are driven by. The other guys down there are less sure about this. They don't know how good an idea this is. It's not human. Does it have other things going on that we don't know about with its system? And of course, Blair and Copper convince Gary, who's actually in charge down there, that no, it's going to be fine. It's dead. It's been frozen for, they speculate, 20 million years it's been in the ice down there. In the film version, it's 100,000 years. So it's a big difference, but we're still talking a long time in the ice. But, so they convince Gary, yeah, it's okay. So Blair's giddy, and he starts chipping away at the ice. So he gets the ice all off the thing, and they can see it better now, of course, which isn't actually making the situation better for the guys who didn't want it unfrozen in the first place. And a physicist named Conant gets the first watch with the thing overnight while it's continuing to defrost. Now, why you need someone to watch the thing while it's defrosting, I don't know. It's like watching a chicken defrost, except it's blue and has 3 eyes. But anyway, so you got to have the guy watching the thing. And this is where the sleepover at the original site is important. So McCready, Copper, Van Walls, and Blair all had dreams about the thing when they were there. Its true nature, its malevolence, its shape-shifting. These are things that crept into their dreams, which leads to the assumption that the thing has telepathic powers of some kind. Now, this is reinforced when Conant's on watch. The thing's thawing. It's no longer just a frozen plank. It's starting to get rubbery, and he's not freaked out when it becomes mobile and tries to escape. So I'm going to read to you just a short excerpt from the book, which talks about this, and you can see what that is like. And we can talk a little bit about why that's important and how that's different than the 1982 version. So again, the thing's thawing out. He's looking in its red eyes, and he's just kind of standing over it, curiosity getting the best of him. He realized vaguely that he had been looking at them, the eyes, for a very long time. Even vaguely understood that they were no longer sightless. But it did not seem of importance. Of no more importance than the labored, slow motion of the tentacular things that sprouted from the base of the scrawny, slowly pulsing neck. Ew. Conant picked up the pressure lamp and returned to the chair. He sat down, staring at the pages of mathematics before him. The clucking of the Geiger counter was strangely less disturbing, the rustle of the coals in the stove no longer distracting. The creak of the floorboards behind him didn't interrupt his thoughts as he went about his weekly report in an automatic manner, filling in columns of data and making brief summarizing notes. The creak of the floorboard sounded nearer. So, old blue feller with the red eyes is creeping up behind Conant, and basically he just doesn't care. It's not important. I have my work to do. So maybe in the back of his mind he's screaming, but in his conscious mind he's not able to. And that's why this version is a bit creepier in a more subtle way. 1982 version, if you're familiar with that, the transformation process or how it attacks or subdues a person isn't subtle at all. It's and the thing and disgusting tentacles and spiny things. This one, it just basically controls you, lulls you like a Venus flytrap, and then it has you. So now we don't know this has happened. This is still a mystery in the book at this point, but that passage very much suggests that's what's going to happen. What does happen, the first thing that the camp is aware of is the attack on the dogs. So the thing is now out and about in the camp. They hear the howling of dogs, the screeching of dogs, and then it's either, I think it's a flamethrower at this point, or a big cattle prod type thing. Forgive my mixing them, because they use both in this version to subdue or destroy the creature. So they go down to the kennel, and this is where it is vague, unfortunately. Unlike the 1982 version where you see exactly how the transformation occurs, this one, you go from knowing the dogs are being attacked and the smell of burned fur, and the page, next chapter, the autopsy is being performed on the dog thing. So it leaves it up to your imagination, but I think, this is just my opinion, a bit more description in there would have been nice about the nature of what occurred. I actually had to reread the chapter like 3 times to see if I had missed something, but it's simply not there. So the dogs get attacked, they kill the critter. Blair, the biologist, does his autopsy on the dog creature, and he understands what has happened. They have an organism that can perfectly imitate other organisms. And if it can imitate a dog, why would it not want to imitate something that could actually get off of this frozen wasteland that it's trapped in? A dog's not going to make it 800 miles, get on a boat or an airplane and get somewhere else. Whatever the alien is thinking about that. But it is picking up on, remember, telepathically. It's reading more than it's just the dog. So the classic line, it doesn't want to be a dog, it wants to be us. And it does. It wants to get out of there. So Blair is, after he realizes all this, he is in distress, with guilt and just the mind-shattering idea of what can happen. Remember, yay science, but it's not always for the greater good. Despite the Nobel Prize, it can get one. If you have the chance of wiping out humanity, you may want to weigh that a bit more. I mean, there's a lot of choices that could have been made, but then you don't have a good story. So he goes a little crazy, and he goes out and destroys the equipment in the aircraft. So the aircraft is no longer capable of flying. He has trapped them there on the ice with no way out. He's done it for a good reason. He needs to make sure that the thing can't get out of Antarctica. So they subdue Blair and they put him out in a shack to keep him away from everybody else. remember, Blair is out in the shack. So now we have massive paranoia. Everybody's freaking out. Nobody, because of what Blair has described to everybody, they no longer trust each other. Do I know who you say you are? Are you you? Who goes there? Paranoia and isolation. It's a bad mixer. So they all decide they're going to stay together for safety, which isn't a terrible idea, except for Blair, who's out in the shack. And they want to watch a movie. They're all in the rec room. And while they're trying to run the movie, there's the character called Kinner the Cook, who we talked about before, basically replaced by Knowles in the 82 version. He's in the kitchen and he's screaming prayers. He's just so freaked out and his voice is shredding and he's driving everybody crazy until he's not. Someone killed Kinner. Funny thing, Kinner is a thing. So they have to take care of that and destroy the body. But the fact that Kinner, the thing Kinner was being a freaked out human, afraid of the thing. Perfect imitation. And it was a good pretender. Except someone killed it. So you have a murderer down there who's an inadvertent hero, which is another kind of odd storyline to think about, but this is an odd story. So Copper, the physician, develops a serum test for blood reaction for regular blood versus thing blood. This should work, except that they don't have a good control because there's more than one thing. Some of them are things. So now that causes even more paranoia. And McCready, after seeing what happens with Kinner, realizes that the thing isn't just a thing. It's every part of the thing is a separate thing. If it comes apart, the tissue is now I have two things or three things. And while it's whole, but as soon as part of it comes off, they actually worry about food contamination. If the thing is the thing, it might part of itself in the food, and now you get a thing in you, and you're digesting it. So the blood test, which if you've seen the 1982 film, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You heat up you take blood samples from everybody, you heat up some wire, and you stab it into the blood, and if it's regular blood, it's just going to sizzle out. If it's thing blood, it's going to try to defend itself, and everybody goes, whoa, that's not good, and now you got to take care of the thing. So this eliminates everybody else, except for Copper, Barkley, McCready, and Norris. Van Wall passes the test, but you don't hear anything about him, and Benning also passes the test, but you don't hear anything about him, so they just kind of become sidelines in the story. I don't know why, it's a bit of a plot hole. But everybody else had to get torched. So they're destroyed. All the other things are dead. Everything's okay. And then you remember, hell, Blair's out in the shack. He's been out there now for almost a week. This timeline has taken place of all these events. So they go out to Blair's shack, and not surprisingly, they discover, oh shucks, Blair's a thing. In this version, it's able to turn itself into almost a liquid and go under small spaces like a door. So it's been doing this and bringing supplies it needs back and forth to the shack, just because it's building something. So they force it out into the snow. McCready uses old faithful blowtorch. While he's killing it, it actually is reverting back to that blue red-eyed form that we talked about at the beginning of this, which is why they think that's its natural form. So, and I think it actually with the dog there was a bit of that as well. So he torches the thing, and they discover it was building an atomic-powered anti-gravity device that would have allowed it to escape. Scary stuff. And that's basically the end of it, except for them looking up at the starry sky, thinking, are there more of them out there? So, key elements here: isolation, paranoia, the unknown, curiosity killed the cat, so to speak. Also, you have, when this was written, remember, it's 1938. So you have the looming World War on the horizon. It's not there yet, but there's a lot of uncertainty, a lot of what's going to happen, probably a lot of paranoia. What I do like very much is the description in the beginning of the book of the camp. That's how everything starts. You go into the camp and you have the musty smell of sweat and snow, wet furs, cooking fats. Just think of a damp place where you don't have much room because you don't have much room. What you have is what you have, and what you have in those places are things that need to be there. There's just not a lot of room for other corridors and small passage and small rooms off those corridors. And you have a monster in there with you. It's terrifying, but brilliant. I do wish the descriptions were a bit more, like I said. It's hard to hold that against the author. You're working with what you have in that time. And the idea of this kind of transformation, while now is not an uncommon thing, back then was very uncommon. But the elements themselves are brilliant. And without them, you don't get the 1951 film, which I'm not going to pan too much, but you don't get the 1982 film, which is an amazing piece of filmmaking. So, until next time, I am Roman of the Empire. Part 2, we will be discussing the 1951 version. It's probably not going to be a very long video. There's not actually tons to discuss. There's some. There's interesting elements about it. And then part 3 will be the 1982 John Carpenter masterpiece. So, be kind to each other. I am signing off.